So I've just started the recording. And so welcome to everyone who is watching this training session. I want to welcome Dr. John Kimani, who is going to be our trainer today. He is with Handicap International. He has over 12 years of experience in multi-sectoral program design, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and learning process in both humanitarian and development contexts. He's currently working with Handicap International, as I said, as an expatriate inclusion humanitarian action specialist based in Juba, South Sudan. He is also currently a master's student in educational management at the University of Nicosia in Scotland. He already has a Bachelor of Arts degree in education, second class upper from Kenyatta University, and a certificate in counseling skills of marginalized groups from Kenya Association of Professional Counselors. He also has a certificate of secondary education from Thika High School for the Blind. He has lived experience in disability policy, advocacy, mainstreaming, integration, and inclusion at global African and East African countries. I could go on. This is quite an accomplished man, and I am honored to have you here to help us learn more about how we can be sure to be inclusive of people with disabilities and training folks on ensuring that we're inclusive in what we teach and how we teach, so that the people that we're training can also pass that on. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and I am going to mute myself. Okay?
Thank you, Lacey, and hi everyone. It's good afternoon to everyone who is with us, and thank you for getting time to join us. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I would also add that I'm also visually impaired by birth, so I have a lived experience of being a person with disability. Yes, and we're gonna start our training session today on disability and inclusion. Our key objective to our training session is to enable us to identify disability, different dynamics at different level. This could be at family level, could be at a school, could be at a social event, or could be at service delivery level, so that we are able to include person's disability in our work. The second objective would be to understand different forms of inclusion within ourselves in relation to to others and in life. It's good to first to have a self-awareness of how we are able to interact, to identify different types of inclusion. Then the third and the last objective would be to understand specific consideration when empowering specific persons with various specific disability. As we shall see, we have different type of disabilities, and they come with different types of challenges that they face during their day-to-day activities. I'll go to the next slide. An overview of what we are going to cover. It's disability versus impairment. We're also going to look at types of various disability, also types of impairment, and we're also going to look at inclusive humanitarian action. As we are all aware, South Sudan largely is a humanitarian context, whereby the NGOs working to complement the government effort in terms of serving our population. Then we shall look at path to inclusion, and also the last one will be consideration when communicating with persons with disability. Some tip sheet on how to communicate with persons with disability. I would start by asking ourselves to check our understanding of disability. I would ask us to think of a person with a disability that you work with. That could be a colleague in office, could be a business person in the community that you do business with, or could be even a neighbor that you think of that have a disability. We could also reflect a person with disability that we went to school with. If one of us had a chance to go to school with a person with disability, or during your school time when you used to go to games with other schools, did you come across any person with disability? And also, we could also think about that person within the community has a disability and is living independently. This is basically to reflect on the abilities and the strengths of people with disability that we have in the community. Probably we could think of maybe a member of parliament who have a disability, or a musicians that you know, or probably a powerful celebrity who have a disability, and think how that person overcame the barriers and how that person was able to achieve what he has achieved, and probably the barriers that he faced and what made that person overcome them. Then we also think about scenario 2 of a person's ability, how they are viewed in the community. Like, for example, in a school, are they in a mainstream school? Are they are they seen as being part of the society? Are they seen as special student? Are they seen as a person who need some special care? Is it common for a person's ability, for a person with a disability data to be found in schools, in hospitals, in our nutrition centers, in our social work space? Is it common for us to collect data in terms of what's your name, your gender, your age, your disability, where do you come from, etc., etc.? Most of the time, you realize that we do biodata of all other aspects, but we forget to capture disability. And that's why when it comes to intervention, then it means we are not able to target them. They come as, oh, we have left some persons outside. Do we need to mainstream? Yes. Now we start adapting. But if we capture this data properly, it could be something positive and something that will be inclusive. Understanding the concept of disability, I will use the Convention on the Right of Person with Disability. It's called the CRPD. It was developed by UN, so sometimes we call it UN CRPD, United Nations Convention on Persons with Disability. It's an international document, and we are happy South Sudan in this year, February 2023, the president put a signature to this. So it became part of the country rules. And the document defined disability as an evolving concept that is not static, depending on the context that you are in, or the society, it's keep evolving. So to understand it better, it defines disability as a result of a functioning impairment coming into contact with barriers or obstacles. Then the experience that come out of that is disability. When I say functioning impairment, I'm referring to our body function. For example, the ability to see, the ability to walk, the ability to talk, the ability to think difficulty concept. That if you lose that function, if you lose the function of walking, then you come across obstacles. Like, for example, a big trench, an open trench, or a big steps to climb, or to a very wide hall. Then it means you're not able to climb those steps. You're not able to jump that hall. That's the obstacles you have. In that context, you're experiencing disability. In some other areas, they say disability is equivalent to difficulties. So we keep interchanging the word disability with difficulties. So it's disability is a result of impairment, a person's impairment coming into contact with an environment that has barriers. The result is disability. And impairment in this context, we consider it to be long and permanent condition, not a temporary one. For example, by bad luck, and God forbid, you get an accident, you lose your one leg, you are taken to the hospital, then you are put on crutches. After 6 months, you recover. That means you are not a person who had a disability. You had just a medical condition. But when you mean long time, it's something that the doctor have assessed, or something that it's known now this is permanent, or this will take many years. So which means you keep experiencing the barriers, you keep experiencing the obstacles here and there, then the result will be disability. And when we talk about barriers, we talk about obstacles in our environment. Sometimes we also refer to laws laws that are not friendly or practices that are not in line with the aspect of aware that people have different categories of risk or vulnerability in terms of gender, age, and disability. It could be policies, could be physical things that we can see, could be communication or attitude of ourselves towards people with disability, or attitude of our fellow colleagues, staff, could be also society itself, our neighbors, etc., etc. So this function impairment plus barriers result to disability. I will use the right-based understanding of disability because, as I said, one of the documents used is the CRPD, Convention on the Right of Persons with Disability, and it advocates for the respect of rights of human beings, and persons with disability are also part of the human beings that we talk about. So the right understanding of disability summarizes disability as a long-term impairment. This could be sensory, physical, intellectual, psychosocial, or multiple. One person can have loss of sight and also loss of walk. So it can be multiple, plus the barriers that I talked about. These barriers could be environmental, attitudinal, or institutional, which results to hindering participation or accessing humanitarian programs or services or protection that resulting to disability. So when we talk about the impact of loss of function, like mobility, it may limit a person from physical functioning, or mobility when barriers to accessibility are present. That could be, as I said, you're using a wheelchair, you come across a door that has steps, then it means that you can't climb those steps because the wheelchair cannot climb its steps, then you experience disability. Or you are using a wheelchair, you come across a narrow door, that it may force you to leave your wheelchair outside and crawl into the building. When you talk about sensory, this affects the way information is taken in and stored when it is presented in inaccessible ways. For example, people with hearing impairment, they use a language called sign language, and we normally assume sign language is part of English language, and these are two different languages. It's, for example, a French speaker being displayed information in English language. That person may not be able to understand the English language. So the same scenario, it's a sign language speaker being given information in English, so they don't comprehend very well the information. So it's always good to be aware of this when you do billboards, do in words, possible pictures. When you're doing advertisement, it's good to do audios and also some short videos, etc., so that we're able to communicate with everybody, to be able to enable people store information and process it well. Sometimes they are just ambiguous words, difficult words. Then people with psychosocial disability may lack concentration, and they hear these big words, and then they fear and they feel like they cannot take it anymore. Then when it comes to psychosocial, affect the way a person thinks, feels, behaves, and interacts with the environment. Sometimes this is referred as not the normal. You get society have their own standard that they set. So when you do something that is not in society standard, then you're considered not normal, and that's why you get people with psychosocial impairment sometimes are referred that like mad persons or people who are abnormal, etc. Those words that are very bad. Then intellectual, limit a person's ability to solve problems, process or retain information, learn or interact with particular contexts such as education. Because education it links information taken with the cognitive part of the person. So sometimes the intellectual impairment may limit a person from this. There's a picture there of people in a group. It's, as you see the picture, you cannot identify persons with a disability. If you ask how many people have a disability here, it's quite difficult, as I said, because we have various types of disabilities. Some are visible, some are invisible. It's very common for a person to say the gentleman in the middle with a crutch is the one with a disability. But there could be more. There could be a hearing impaired person there. There could be a person with visual impairment. There could be a person with psychosocial disability, etc., etc. So it's good to not assume. And that's why we said it's good to collect data and ask people if they have disability. Sometimes we have tools that enable us to identify disability without necessarily being medical professionals. So I'll just quickly go through a journey of disability. As we said, it's an evolving concept. So during various phases of life, it has been viewed differently. And it has been a journey up to where we are today. We can speak these things out very well. Just like gender issues, some way back, some years ago, it was difficult for people to think that a woman could be in an office or a woman could drive a car. But it's a journey that takes time, advocacy, awareness, lobbying, etc., etc. Even us to get some laws that are addressing issues around disability. It has taken us a journey. And we started some years back with one model that was called medical model, whereby here people with disability were seen as sick persons. So if you had an impairment, you are referred to hospital for treatment. If you had a lack of seeing, hearing, or even talking, you are told, can you see a doctor? So that time, all issues of person's ability were referred to hospital so that they be solved there, and their needs were diagnosed and medical treatment administered through that medical model. So with the time, people realized that some of the conditions are not curable. As much as we keep referring people to the hospital for therapy, for whatever kind of diagnosis, they are not curable. So they moved from medical to charity model. So society decided now it's time to help these people because they cannot be cured. They are going to be sick permanently. Let's try and help them. That's where we came across the charity model, where welfare-based vulnerability was used. When we are saying you can't walk, then people started giving donations, giving clothes, giving food, etc. And this brought up an issue of begging. So also people's ability responded with, okay, society want to help me, let me beg, let me go there in the street, beg and get money. And they became rich through that one. And now people realize that these people can also do something, and it's not good to just see them as beneficiaries. Let's also involve them. Then the social model came into play, and this model was quite good because it viewed disability as an inclusion problem. The society wanted to include them into the society, but now it was a problem because they did not understand how can we treat these people, how can we try our best to not offend them, but include them and make them part of the society. And that's why people thought and sat down and they came with the right-based model, the human rights approach, whereby they said, let's respect these people as humans, and all rights that are granted to any other human being, let them also enjoy. And that's why we have the human rights model. It's the most recent one. Probably we'll move this to another one, but so far this is the best that we have. And here people's ability could own things. They had the right to own land, they had the right to marriage, the right to own cars, the right to go to school, the right to get job, etc., etc. And they also had the right to contribute to the growth of the nation. I would not say there is a bad model. What I'm trying to put across is that depending on the way you perceive person's ability, it has an impact on them. If you perceive them as people who are sick, it means that you tentatively refer them to hospital or think that their cases are supposed to be based in the hospital. If you see them as weak persons, it might lead you to sympathize, give them support, make them feel like they are receiving and they're not supposed to contribute, and that is charitable approach. If you see them as part of society, you might try your best to include them. And this is where actually all of us are. We are trying our best to include them. We are trying our best to be not offensive, but we don't know how. And the how is the right based approach model, respecting their rights and promoting their well-being. So the first two models, medical and charitable, they are disempowering to persons with disability. But that's the second one, the social model, the right-based model, they're empowering. So the social and right-based model combined can result to an empowered person's ability, and the right-based model ensures protection and respect of their rights and as part of human beings. At this point, we would take a case study or a case scenario for 15 minutes for a case of submit. And the case study brings out various barriers that a person can face, various angles that a caseworker can try the best how to interact with a client at the homestead or in the community. So during our exercise, we'll be able to identify elements that have barriers or elements that need more referral to specific service providers, or elements that as a social worker, you're able to handle those elements and you're aware of them. So after that, we'll move to what is inclusive humanitarian action if you don't have any question. And think of a recent social work project or program we worked on. Because as I said, in our context, South Sudan, we largely have humanitarian response. So most of us as social workers or people who are going to interact with social workers, it's good to put this into context. Let them share the work they are doing. And in their sharing, you be aware or listen to words like disabled, crippled, those kind of words that people use to refer them, the words that are not positive, but because unconsciously they are not aware, they keep referring to them disabled, crippled, cannot do, can't go to school, need help, all those kind of things. When they are sharing their reason program, could be awareness campaign, could be a focus group discussion, could be maybe a HIV drive or women empowerment social program, etc., etc. But listen to those keywords so that we are able to also help them avoid them. So inclusive humanitarian action focuses on identifying and removing barriers so that individuals and groups who are more at risk because of their gender, age, disability, economic status, etc., are able and are discriminated or excluded from participating in decision making, benefit from humanitarian action on an equal basis with others. So we want all these people, despite of their heightened risk, despite of the chances of the discrimination they might face or exclusion they might face, we want them to be included in our programming. That's why we call it inclusive humanitarian action. So it basically focuses on that. And I'll share with you some key document that you would want to use to refer to inclusive humanitarian action. Sometimes I get very common question, why, John, do you talk about these people? Why do you keep focusing on disability every day out? And the reason is because the numbers that we are talking about, when it comes to the data in humanitarian setting, like South Sudan, where we have so many constraints, so many factors that lead to displacement, movement of people, migration. So when you come to data, you look at it, you see that affected most of the affected population when it comes to any kind of humanitarian crisis are persons with disability and women. And it's because most of the services are inaccessible. Because when we are responding, we basically respond very fast, and we just focus on life-saving situations, and we don't think of are we living in any type of group outside. So then also our social services are not structured in a manner that persons with various different types of impairment can be able to interact with them very well. So we also have increased permanent and long-term impairment, which could be a result of prolonged war, could be a result of lack of access to health services, could be because of poor education on health-seeking behaviors. Maybe parents are not able to deliver at the hospital, so it results to permanent impairment, which means more people with disability are found there. We don't have an official data for persons with disability because, again, as I said, we have a gap in terms of do we collect this data. So what WHO does is to estimate that 15% of any given population are persons with disability. So in our last HNO 2023, 9 million people were given by UN OCHA as persons in need of humanitarian intervention. So if you take this one, 15% would be round off to 1.5 million persons in South Sudan who are persons with disability and need our intervention. Moving on, additional evidence shows that high prevalence rate could be in South Sudan. South Sudan can be more than 15% because of the various factors that we have. This could be war, poor health services, poor infrastructure, flooding, droughts that we keep experiencing, etc., etc. So this kind of experience means that more and more people with disability are in South Sudan context, because as we saw, the estimate is global, but when it go down to various contexts, it might change because of these factors that I've given. So I'll move to what this reflects. This reflects that persons with disability are not all facing the same level of risk, because if you put a boy and a girl with disability, definitely a girl is more at risk than the boy when it comes to disability issues or risk. Then heightened risk influenced by multiple factors, including health, conditions, type, and level of impairment. That could be sex, gender, age, culture, economic status, as I said, etc., etc. My left side, you can see a graph there showing all these factors, how they come and intersect together. The impairment, the age, the gender, and other social factors, how they come together and how they result to a heightened risk. I'll move on to legal and frameworks that we have in the country. One of them I said is the CRPD, Convention on the Right of Persons with Disability. The second one is it's the international human law. We also have international human rights law and also international refugee law. All these documents are legal policies that would make our shift towards right-based approach. Remember the approaches that I had given earlier there. It means that we are able to use these documents to promote the right-based approach of disability. This slide I'm sharing is just basically to show the various documents we can tap in and how we can use this document into our intervention. So I would urge all of us in our own free time, all these documents are online. If you Google any one of them, you get it, and it's good to read. But the focus should be on the Interagency Standing Committee on Inclusion of Persons with Disability. This is the document that have step-to-step in each sector, how we can be more inclusive. So it's good to refer to this. This I would emphasize it like a Bible. And then we'll be able to use them. So I'll move to what is inclusion and types of inclusion we talk about. I'm sharing a diagram showing various circles. The first circle is exclusion. You see the balls are inside the circle and some are outside. So I'll use education as an example here so that we are able to understand it better. So in exclusion, in an education system, is whereby we have schools that are meant for different types of persons with disability. For example, you could have primary school for the visually impaired alone. So if you're a person who can see, you are not supposed to be in that school. And this means that also people who are visually impaired cannot be admitted in schools that have other students. Or for example, you have school for the physically disabled, which means that they are exclusively set for those types of disability. This results to one big problem that we might have early childhood education for physically disabled, primary school for the physically disabled, secondary school for the physically disabled. But when it comes to university, it is quite difficult to have one university set aside for the physically disabled. So at university level, you will have to now join a mainstream university. Now the challenge comes here. Other students or other children or learners from early childhood education all the way to primary, secondary, and university, they have never come across a colleague who is a person with disability. So at university level, they keep wondering, where did this person go? I like here sharing my personal experience because, as I said, I was born visually impaired. So in our country, I come from Kenya. We had this kind of system when I was school going age, where we had a school for the visually impaired. They were called school for the blind. So I went primary and secondary school for the blind. Then I joined Kenyatta University, one of the national universities in Kenya. And at that level, I could meet people and they could be asking me, did you qualify to get here? Which school did you go? They don't even know the school. Did you search for your O levels? How did you perform? Can we see them? They were wondering, they had so many questions in their mind because to them, they had not come across a person who is blind and also in school. So it's quite a bad idea, I would say. And as I said, this circle represents exclusion. Then we have the top right circle. It shows separation, whereby people are put separately completely from others, like person's ability. Everything is set aside for them. A good example here could be wash facility. You have a wash facility or a trim set aside. It's written men for gentlemen and women, female for women. Then an extra that door written disabled. So this is meant for disabled person. No matter your gender, as long as you're a person with a disability, you're supposed to share this trim. So this means the separation of services, and it leads to person with disability getting services in an undignified manner. We are not respecting their right, because if I'm a woman or a man, my privacy should come number one. The way we have wash facility for men and women without disability separately, then I also would like to, as a woman with disability, go to a wash facility for women. But you see, in most of our cases, we have this set aside as for disabled. Even if you go to most of the airports, you'll get this kind of a setting. You go to most of the offices, you get this kind of setting. Most of the schools, you get that setting of wash facility. The same case occurs when we are giving services. You tend to see if I'm offering, let's say I'm supposed to respond to GBB cases. Then I come across a girl with a disability with a GB case. I refer that girl to Handicap International because we believe it's Handicap International that works for persons with disability. And that is separation again. And this leads to people thinking that people with disability have magical issues or have magical powers or have special treatment compared to the other ones. So these two circles, I would discourage us to embrace them. Let's move to the third one, bottom left, sorry. And here we have integration. In integration here, we are talking about people getting services in one setting, but in different sections. For example, you have a school. The school is one school, one compound, but inside we have classrooms for special cases. We have classroom for persons with disability, but in the same school. So which means that we might be having classes for people without disability, then other classes for people with disability, but they are wearing the same uniform. They have the same head teacher, the same school management, the same compound, etc., etc. Only the difference comes when it comes to teaching. They are taught in a different room compared to the others. It's not a bad idea because gradually this leads to inclusion, which is our bottom right circle, whereby you get in the school, people with disability are in the same school, the same class. If I'm in grade 2, I'm taught in one room with all other children without disability. So it's one teacher teaching us. If I'm a person with hearing impairment, as a teacher is teaching, then the teacher can also do sign language. But if the teacher cannot do sign language, we have sign language interpreter, who we call them shadow teachers. They come and interpret for me. If I'm visually impaired, the teacher is teaching, I can hear, I listen, then I take my notes in Braille. As others are taking their note in their notebooks, I take my note in Braille. So when they are doing revision, I can read my Braille revision, and then they can read their printed version. Then when it comes to exam, my exam is done in print version and Braille version. So it's brought to all students and given to us. If I'm low vision, it can be large print. If vision impaired, it can be audio, videos, short clips of videos, etc., etc. So we cannot achieve inclusion in 1 day or 1 year. That's why I said integration is good, because with the time as we integrate, we will achieve inclusion without us realizing we have achieved inclusion. At this point, I would say, like the Juba University, I had come across a student. She's a female student, and she was sharing me her experiences in the university. And here she was telling me, John, the university is good. It has integration. The only challenge comes when it comes to exam time, because she's visually impaired, totally blind. So when it comes to exam time, she's taken in a separate room, and a person would read the exam to the lady, then the lady would answer. So she would tell me this experience made her feel like she was going through interview. Every exam was like an interview to her. It's a bad thing, but it made her stronger, because she was able to get a secure job, because now she could not fear interviews. Oral interviews, she could go and perform very well. It also grew her confidence in terms of speaking and addressing crowds. But it's not a good thing to make her go aside, because the stigma that came with it is that other students thought she's been done the exam. Other students thought that she'd just been awarded the marks. She did go to school but does not do exam, because they could not see her in exam room. That's why I was saying it's good to have people in one room. Let other students experience what this difficulty this lady is going through, and this promote inclusion, and would appreciate the ability of this girl, rather than thinking that, oh, we went to classes together, and at the end of the term, we were given exam, but this lady was taken aside and we wanted marks. It's not a stigma that she can easily fight about, unless she keeps sharing her experiences so that people can believe in her. So I think it's the beginning, UNICEF and Handicap International and Juba University. I think it's a beginning, and I hope with time we'll get a chance to interact with more lecturers, more administrators of Juba University, and have sessions with them and see how best can we be more inclusive to these students with disability, so that we reduce the stigma attached to them and we promote inclusion. If you have no question, I would move to the next slide, which is key programming when it comes to our work. How do we promote inclusion? As we are seeing, we have a big task ahead of us to promote inclusion, and it's not an easy deal. It's quite difficult. So we normally recommend two approaches in our programming. That is the twin track approach. One twin is inclusive mainstreaming program, where humanitarian programs and intervention are designed and implemented in an inclusive manner. That is involving even persons with disability as key stakeholders and players, and also working with them through the journey. The other twin is a targeted intervention, whereby we have specific program that address the gaps that comes with disability. Remember, in our circles, I said integration is good. So targeted intervention is like integration. Then inclusive mainstreaming is like inclusion itself now. So when you talk about inclusive mainstreaming, it's whereby we have mainstreamed our services. Persons with disability and those without disability are able to access them on an equal basis. A good example is a school whereby we have one school, one classroom, one teacher teaching both learners with and without disability. And here we said it's good to have shadow teachers to make sure you bridge the gap of those learners with either hearing impairment, vision impairment, or psychosocial disability. Because for the physical impairment, it's okay. They can sit and listen and hear and take notes. But the other impairment might need some shadow teachers to do that. That is mainstream approach. When it comes to probably, when it comes to health facilities, it means that every service delivery point is one. When it comes to the registration desk is one. To see the doctor is one room. We don't have a separate room because the room is accessible and mainstream. The doors are okay. The person can enter inside. Those are mainstream services, whereby we now, when we do that, we say we are being inclusive. The targeted intervention, it's the services that are specifically meant for persons with disability because of their specific impairment. For example, a wheelchair. The issue of devices like wheelchair, tricycle, a white cane, mobility aids, those are targeted intervention. Another targeted intervention could be probably rehabilitation, physical therapy, occupation therapy, speech therapy. Those are targeted intervention, and they are meant for persons with disability because they need them alone. And we normally say it's good to have a twin track approach. One side you have inclusive intervention, and the other side you have the targeted intervention, so that we leave no one out of our services or no one behind. I'll move to humanitarian leadership. A moment, I sip a cup of water. Okay, we move ahead. When we talk about who is supposed to be responsible in our context of Sudan, we talk about humanitarian leadership. That could be humanitarian clusters, government, programs, donors, community-based organization for persons with disabilities, that is OPDs, and also disability-specific targeted organization like Handicap International and others, and businesses, communities, and education. So you'll see here whereby we have a pyramid drawing showing like bottom there we have tools. What we need to have the checklist, training tools, accessibility assessment, etc. So that when we have good tools at our work, then we are able to do targeted and inclusive intervention. The second thing we need is guidance. Yes, we have these tools, you have collected data, you have the data of persons with disability, you know how many boys you're talking about, how many girls you're talking about, how many boys with disability, how many girls with disability, which kind of barriers, which is the most barrier faced, which is the least barrier faced, which specific service do they need in terms of empowering them. You have all that data. So next you need is guidance. And here I said the Interagency Studying Committee on Inclusion of Persons with Disability is one of the key documents you might use. Also, you have UNICEF need to know guidance, also very good to use. Inclusive communication and accessibility guidance, also very key in our work, so that we'll be able to address the gaps that we have identified through our tools that we have. Then once you have the tools, you have the information, you have the guidance in play, the next is to ensure that you have standard policies that address core humanitarian needs of persons with disability. So here, the recommended standard policies are core humanitarian standard, that is the share standard, humanitarian inclusion standard, we have them, our organizational or national policies. I'm sure even the Juba University have their own policies, make sure they are more inclusive. If, for example, that case of that lady, maybe the policy is one that says that because they have disability, they need somebody to read for them. It's high time to review the policy and see how best can we address the needs of students with disability. Then the last is to respect various legal frameworks that we talked about. They could be a CRPD, it could be national constitution and law. And South Sudan, we have a very, very vibrant National Disability Act. It's quite interesting because South Sudan it was born or it came into place after the National Disability Act was signed by the Sudan then. Yeah, because it was one country, Sudan. Sudan as a country had signed the CRPD, had come up with a National Disability Act. So in 2012 is when South Sudan was born. So it was born when already this document was there. So the National Disability Act is a very strong one. We also have Educational Act in South Sudan, also a very, very strong document that we need to tap in. So as we come to the end of our first session, we have our key learning that inclusive material action is about key legal and policy framework, addressing the right of persons with disability in humanitarian emergencies. Because once we address the right of persons with disability, we are able now to ensure that we have inclusive. Also, it's about a range of stakeholders who are obligated to progressively implement this framework into policies and action. These stakeholders could be you and me, could be our society, our community. We also saw the other clusters and government. Also, it's about data of persons with disability, which is key, essential in our design and programming. Because without data, then we are not able to budget, we're not able to allocate resources, and we are not able to address the specific need. A quick short break for tea, coffee, etc. Maybe calling someone you have missed, and then we come back to path to inclusion. Process and personal change. We start with change happens all the time, and we cannot resist change because what we were yesterday is not what we are today, and I'm very sure tomorrow will be different. Change is all about growth. It's about moving from one level to another level. So sometimes change happens to us, and we are not aware. Today you can be a person with a disability. Something might happen badly somewhere, and then you get an accident. You get the war has broke out. You get maybe a natural calamity, etc. Then you acquire an impairment, which means you have to survive. Sometimes we make changes happen. That is inclusion. In terms of inclusion, we have to embrace persons with disability so that we are able to be sure that change is there, and change is normal and it's part of human being, and it's all building our strength. But it can be difficult, and we need to help each other to achieve this. The diagram I'm sharing, it's a whole process of what happens. Because when we realize that we are about to experience something new, I'm very sure all of us have that anxiety. We don't know what is going to happen. We are just there thinking, what next? In my case, most of the time when I have to take a task, like if I have a flight, no matter how many times I've flown, I normally have anxiety. I even keep running to the washroom. I don't know why, and I've flown so many times, but anytime I have a flight, I'm like, can I cope with this? Am I going to go through this flight this time? And God help me. I normally say like that. So it's something that is new to everybody, and it starts by doubts. You start doubting yourself, anxiety. You start what am I going to do? Then you get into it. You start adapting yourself. You start even now being comfortable. You start happiness, all those kind of things. So the diagram here, you can see very well illustrating all those stages of change. And at the end of it, once you embrace the change, you now start moving forward, and you say it was for the good. So sometimes, like when we talk about collecting data in terms of gender, age, and disability is a new thing. I'm sure a male person who like, why do we need this? The data enumerator, like, this is an extra job. Why do we have to add this? It's good to give them time. let them accept it, let them deal with it, adapt, and then they will start telling you, actually it's a good thing and let's move with this. An exercise of think of a personal change you made in your life. How was it? You could remember how you went through these stages. And I'm sure of us at this time, we have been able to have these kind of experiences and these kind of changes. Can be also a new job, change of a job, can be a new course. You have decided, let me start my master's. It could be even marriage. It could be even taking your kid to school. You don't know how that kid will cope, etc., etc. So think of a scenario that you had. It's good you share with your partner, and you'll be able to identify those things that we have seen about there. The next topic will be how to consider, what to consider when communicating with person with a disability. As I had said, various types of disability come with various challenges. Here we would have taken an exercise on communicating with persons with various types of disability. Group 1 could have handled an old woman that has limited vision and hearing, that is deaf blindness. Remember we said we have multiple disability, sometimes multiple disability. The common one is deaf blindness. Because of age, maybe a person who is blind, then with age he gets hearing problem, or the other way around. Then group 2 would be a young man with an intellectual disability. Then the last group, group 3, not the last one, a person with a physical disability. Then group 4 could be a person who is deaf. So the idea is to have role play in your groups. One takes this character, then the other try to communicate with them. Just sharing some pictures of person with disability. One of them is a person with disability facilitating a conference or a workshop, I would say. Then the other picture is a child on a wheelchair, very happy, moving around. So what could be the challenges and opportunities in empowering persons with disability is what we want to think about now. And is the core thing that we were about to do today. So challenges that are there is like mostly and commonly people with disability decisions have been made by their family members. You'll get a person with disability who is doing teaching. You ask them, was it your dream to be a teacher? No. My mother, my father decided for me. These are very common challenges. And if this is the case, as a social worker, you'll also get the same thing. You ask a question to an individual who replies, the companion, the sister, the mother, the uncle, the relative. Because they think people with disability cannot decide on their own. The next challenge is that most of persons with disability have experienced isolation. They have lack of enablers like devices, mobility aid, interpreters, sighted guide, etc. They lack this kind of support at their community level, and also they lack information on various opportunities. So because of this, they are a bit violent. You get them a bit negative, a bit reserved. They don't believe in what you are telling them. And as a social worker, you'll be tempted to say, this guy is rude. Let me leave and go to the one who are cooperating. But it's because in most cases, their inner ability is distorted because of the isolation, lack of support of enablers in the community level, lack of information on opportunities. Then most of the time, accessibility needs are perceived to be very expensive. And in that context, it's hard to get accessibilities in various buildings, various contexts, various individuals. If a person is told to go and do sign language and you already know English and French probably, you think, why should I go to school? Why should I spend money more to do another language? And because of it, we have very few sign language interpreters. In the country, I think we have, if I'm not wrong, less than 6, and 2 are already with the HI, so 4 are the one outside there. So it's very difficult to have persons with hearing impairment get interpreters. But in most cases, they have their own relatives who have their own language. It's not the professional sign language, but they communicate with their own local languages. So because of these challenges, what opportunities do we have? One is the role models. In South Sudan, we have very good opportunity because we have so many persons with disability who have made it, who are either in parliament, either in government, either in NGO sector, either in business sectors. They are there. And we can use these role models to come to mentor our young persons with disability, to come to talk to them, share their experiences, share their challenges, how they overcame them, and what they are doing now. And through these role models, we realize that the young people with disability will have a vision, will have an energy to achieve also, to work. Personally, I was attached to a role model at high school when I was in high school, and that made me go all the way to university, did education, but I did not go to school to teach. My role model told me there's more in you, John, than being in the four walls of a classroom. And that's why I got outside and engaged in the NGO world. And I still keep the person up to today. I'm blessed he's still with me and he keep guides me. So a role model can be very influential. Then just know that everyone has capabilities or abilities and can find ways to contribute to their own life. So even if you come across this person's ability who is very negative because of the history of isolation, history of stigma, history of lack of opportunities, just know that when you interact with that person very well, build her or his agency, build his confidence or her confidence, that person can contribute positively in his life or her life. Every one of us has that ability to contribute positively. Sometimes actually the obstacles that we have in life, it's you yourself. And the time you realize that I am the obstacle for myself, then that time you realize your success, because the biggest challenge is an individual themselves. If they don't believe in themselves, it's difficult for you as a social worker to go and make that person believe. But it's good to have this positive I believe that every one of us can contribute. And when you go there, no matter the challenges you're facing, even if the family member is there making decisions for that person, it's good to tell the family member, this person can make their own decision. Their destiny is in their hands. Yes, we appreciate your supportive. Play the role of supportive. Don't play the role of changing their destiny. Just support their dreams, support their visions, and they will achieve what they want to achieve in life. This is an activity to identify risk that comes with the person's ability and vulnerability. As I had mentioned earlier, because of the gender, the economic status, the family unit, the age, the disability, etc., etc., a person might face multiple risks, multiple vulnerabilities. And we had said that to reduce this risk, specifically for person's disability, is to promote enablers. Enablers are those things that make a person's ability be able to overcome barriers. Could be a mobility aid, could be making sure our policies are very inclusive, could be making sure our attitude are positive towards person's ability, change of behavior, how we behave around the person's ability, how we communicate with them, how we show them opportunities. We stop empathy, but not empathy, we stop sympathy, we be empathetic with them. All those kind of things are enablers. Make sure our buildings are accessible. We have wide doors, we have ramps where there's steps, clear signages, space inside that we can navigate with a wheelchair, tricycle. Make sure we don't have separate undignified services like wash facility. Let's not have men and women with disability sharing one room. Let's have all our facility accessible so that people can access services in a dignified human rights way. As we come to end these sessions, these are our key learning points. It's important for a caseworker to understand disability dynamics and disability relation when providing support to a person with disability. As I said, they are not homogeneous group. They have different types of disability. They face same challenges as any other person. They are mothers, they are fathers, they are children, they are uncles. So they face, when you talk about floods, they also affected. When you talk about drought, they are affected. So it's good to organize that. The more disability a person has, as we have said, some have multiple disability. It could be deaf blindness, could be walking and not seeing. The more disability a person has, the more choices are available to that person. People who have less disability have fewer choices and are therefore more exposed to abuse, exclusion, and discrimination. When it comes to disability, if I have more disability, I'm exposed more. If I have less disability, I'm less exposed. For example, when it comes to vision impairment, we have categories. There's also low vision. They are totally blind vision. So if you're totally blind, it means you don't see at all. And you can compare that with a person who is low vision. Inclusion is both a process and a result. We had said integration is can lead to inclusion, so it's a result, and its meaning might change from context to context. This means in one context you can have inclusion, like in a school, but when you go to a hospital, we don't have inclusion, we have integration. So it keeps changing. So it's good to realize as a caseworker, as you refer a person to other services, be aware that those services might not be inclusive, they might be integrated, they might not be even accessible. So it's good to inform the person you're referring and then make sure they're also able to be aware of any barriers they will come across. Then we saw change, and we saw how change cannot occur easy. It's a process that really influenced by ourselves, because we have various experiences at various level of change. And I'm sure when you talk about inclusion, it will come with various changes. So it will be a process also. Case workers should take specific consideration in supporting persons with various disabilities. As I said, it's good to recognize persons disability deaf. Make sure you know sign language, or you go with a sign language interpreter. Also, when it comes to vision impairment, don't assume because they're vision impaired they cannot hear. Most of the case, people assume people with disability have all disabilities. Because I'm blind, get somebody shouting at me, thinking that I cannot also hear. So it's good to recognize all those kind of things. So here we have additional reference materials that I had shared early, but it's good to take time, go through these materials. There are some are PowerPoint presentations, some are PDF documents that are there for us. There's power in reading. So if you go to internet, you get a lot of materials and a lot of information that we have there. And when it comes to communication with person with disability, we have a tip sheet for all types of disability. I didn't want to cover it today because of the time. We have a tip sheet how we can communicate with a blind person, with a deaf person, with physically challenged person, with a psychosocial challenge, intellectual, etc. And it's a 2-page document. It's not that big, but with a lot of information. And that's the end of our session. Any question? And thank you. You can also see thank you in sign language that I've displayed there. And I thank everyone for their active participation and listening. Thank you. Back to you, Lacey.
Thank you so much. Even though I heard you before, I've learned more again today. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And I encourage people to look at those resources. Thank you, John, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's see.
You can stop recording.
That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to find the pause, the stop.